in the southern part of France, so I don't know much about that, right? But I'm asking because I remember you did this video about your hair, right? I get in products. You were saying by far France was like the easiest country to find black hair products, I guess, or even salons to do something with your hair. What was that experience like? Like, could you tell us more about that? Like living as a black person in the south of France?
So I was, why I keep shifting my tripod? So I was pretty stressed about my hair. At that time I had relaxed hair, so I had cream hair. And I was like, okay, who's going to do my hair? Am I going to have to figure this out? I don't know. And what I did was I just started like looking for black people. So good thing is that France, in terms of Europe, has a relatively large black population. So Africans, and so in my town, which is also like because it's a university town as well.
Oh, a lot of people.
There were also students, right? So there were international students. There were also, just black population, a relatively large black population, right?
Yeah.
And so literally I would just walk around and be like, okay, that person seems to have like good hair. Excuse me, bonjour. Can you tell me where you got the hair done? Yeah. I did that for like the first month. I was like, I have a month to go before I need to like relax my hair again, cream it. Maybe I can push it 2 months, but like I need to find. So my first month, I was just like stalking people, walking around. Okay, here, where do you go? Ooh, where I get these braids? But it was so expensive. Like to just cream your hair would be like 120 euros, which is like 130, 40 US dollars. And for me, the equivalent, like what you'd pay in Jamaica, would be something like 35 euros. So to have that shift from, I was like, what? 100? No, me not do that. That not what? But not paying 100. And I had short hair. Like I even cut my hair off because I'm like, short hair is gonna be easy, right? So I cut my hair off, everything. Had the Tony Braxton hairstyle going on. And so I was walking around stalking people and I realized these prices are enormous. They're ridiculous and I'm not paying these prices. Like, okay, well now I need to find I need to go learn how to do my hair. So YouTube was my friend. And every time I stalked somebody, I would ask them for a salon and then I would go to the salon and ask them, so if I need to buy the products, where I would go and buy it. And like, oh no, we'll get it for you. I'm like, no, I just also want, because I've sensitive skin, telling bare lies. This is in French, where I'm not really great at this point. And I had to like literally study the phrases that I wanted. I'd be like, no, sensitive skin, non, je peux pas, c'est allergie, I have an allergy. They're like, what is she talking about? I'm trying to say I have sensitive scalp because I'm trying to lie to figure out how can I get these products because my ass is not paying for that. Finally worked out. And then fortunately, it's how I got to France was from the teaching assistant program. So there were other teaching assistants. And I knew one who went to high school together and she was relatively close by. It's like she's in another state. She was in Montpellier, which is maybe 2 hours by train. And so I was like, yo, I'm going to come visit you. Can you cream my hair? She's like, I never do this. I'm like, I am sure it's going to be better than whatever these white people salon is going to do. So I went to her house. And I bought the product and we watched YouTube together. And I was like, you just need to put it on the side here, put it on this, on the hair, just my natural hair. Don't put it on the straight cream hair. And we went and she creamed my hair. That's how I first started creaming my hair. And then I started learning for myself. And then I had a really good friend. She's Irish. And I was like, yo, Megs, you want to try cream my hair? She's like, huh? What is that? So I had to explain. She's white, right? So I had to explain what that process, why cream hair. She's like, but that's not good for you. That's also that's also what started clicking. That actually started the shift of why do I cream my hair though? And she's like, so you do that? That's a lot. She's like, well, I mean, I sit down and straighten my hair all the time for the thing, but like, wow, so actual chemicals. And so I was like, yeah, you can help me cream my hair. And so she tried. She's like, I'm really not comfortable with doing this. I feel like I'm gonna hurt you. And so it was just me and her trying to figure out my hair.
It's interesting that realization came through your experience traveling and meeting people who were not used to our culture. Because in Jamaica, that's pretty normal. That's normal.
It's pretty normal.
I looked forward to creaming my hair. I remember from when I was young because it was just so normal. Yeah, but no, I have natural hair. But
it was, and it was also like moving and experiencing people who appreciated my hair, actually, because you don't get a lot of hair appreciation or you get a certain kind of hair appreciation in Black communities and in the Caribbean, pretty hair.
That's another
but
thing.
moving into a place where it was just all Betty hair and they love black hair, and I'm like, sometimes I'd be literally to the driest natural hair, just in need of things, and they're like, this is so gorgeous, and I'm like, what is happening? So that was also like a shock, right? And I'm like, this hair needs treatment. It would be it's not healthy hair right now. And then I'm like, but wait, Diedre, you don't have healthy hair on your head because it's cream, which is damaged hair. So like, who are you to tell, to say that this natural hair dry, or and who are you? So that was also like an experience. And for me, that was when I started thinking about my natural hair and identity. That sort of like Black identity, because I'm Jamaican. Jamaicans are just Jamaicans. You don't say you're Black, you're white, you don't really say that. You're just Jamaican. And then you're female, and then you're whatever. And it's when I moved to France that Jesus, if I keep doing this, when I moved to France was when I started like thinking about identity and that sort of thing. So that was also like one of the things that shocked me for living in France. That's another
perspective you get when you move abroad. I think you start thinking about your full identity rather than just your nationality. When you're kind of forced to in America anyway, you're kind of forced to, so you have to recognize that. I when I first moved here, I remember there was a lot of other Caribbean people complaining that just in college, when I was in college, people used to say to me, a lot of Jamaicans don't want to admit that they're Black, even though they can look like me and you, and they still want to say, oh no, I'm not Black, I'm Jamaican. And I'm like, what does that mean? That you're not Black, you're Jamaican? You were Black, but you're also Jamaican. You can be both. Jamaican is not a race.
But for us, it's such a strong identifier. I think it's also like, because in other Caribbean countries, but in Jamaica, you're really, because the status quo is Blackness, and it's this, everybody is Jamaican. Like, we don't say Chinese Jamaican, we don't say Indian Jamaican, we don't say Black Jamaican, we don't have like other names, Douglas, like they would say in Trinidad. We don't really have that. We just have Jamaican, right? And you'll say, oh, she mixed, but this is normal, whatever.
I think there's
we don't have the separation
that we have. I remember growing up, I never used to really. Of course, yes, I know the Chinese man that owned the store, right? Like, I know he's Chinese, but it's not like something where I see like he's very different than me. I just feel like, oh yeah, he's just, if his name is Tyrone,
he just looks like that, Mr. Chin, Tyrone Chin, the Chinaman, but he's Jamaican. We don't have that.
Very, very, very different. Only time I notice differences between the races is like when the language is different. Language is different, because I remember some of the Chinese stores, the grocery stores, when they were talking in Chinese, like a Mandarin, then I would notice, oh, there's a difference. And maybe they're not even, because most Chinese that I knew in Jamaica, they were Jamaican. So then to see them speaking a different language, and I was like, oh, they're just coming from China.
It's like, just off the boat. Oh, this one just come because Mr. Chin round there straight patois. And so then you're like, oh, this is a new one. Right.
You start noticing, and then I think there's a lack of, there's kind of this historical amnesia among Jamaicans too. We don't history is
Mm-hmm.
not passed on enough for us to understand, because there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with being diverse. It's beautiful.
Right.
I think that's what makes us beautiful. But we also have to understand our history. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that we're kind of forced to face our history when we move abroad. So that's
You
what I was
really
trying to say.
are,
Yeah.
and you really start
Mhm.
living in relation to, whereas in relation to the majority, or in relation to what's in power. And there's so much like, it's not quite like that in Jamaica. And so moving abroad was when I first like, oh, I'm black.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm not, oh, I'm black, like, who are you? I'm black. I'm
Yeah.
Jamaican, or I'm Jamaican, I'm black, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why when it really started to hit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
what was that like though when you were in India? Because India was I'm betting a very different story. Like here, black woman here problems. And I remember one of the pictures you had an IG story, not IGTV that you put up about your experience in India. And I saw that on one of them, you're like the person just met a black woman for the first time, a black person for the first time. It was their first time meeting a black person. I was like, whoa, I wonder what that was like to meet somebody who's never met a black person before. What was it like living in a place where you're really the super minority?
so India was an experience. India is my most impactful country that I've
Wow.
visited so far.
Yeah.
I think it's like that vibration from India that's, I don't know, it kind of like reaches and touches your soul. And so moving to India, that was also another trip, but we're not going to talk about those adventures. Moving to India, I arrived. So remember I told you that I was processing and thinking about, my identity and what does that mean, especially in relation to hair. And I actually did my big chop in France
Uh-huh.
a little bit before moving to India, and in the barbershop, they were just like, what are you doing? Why are you cutting off all your hair? I went to an African barbershop, of course, and I'm like, I need some black person to start this out.
Yeah.
And I was like, cut it off. I didn't even have that much new natural hair growing up and stuff. And I was like, cut it off. And I was like, lower, cut it lower, shorter, shorter. And they're like, no, we can't. Let's just leave the front long. And I'm like, cut it off. Oh God, it was a battle in the
I can't
barbershop.
imagine. That was
He
probably a very new
refused.
thing to them. Very new, I think.
Yes, it was. He's like, I cannot believe this woman coming. Because my hair was probably like this long as well,
Yeah.
like, and I decide, oh, cut it off to like, it was like an inch, it was like less than an inch of hair was left on my
Yeah.
head.
Wow.
Anyway, so when I moved to India, I wasn't sure. This was when I was doing my master's, and I moved to India for an internship. And I wasn't sure how they were going to treat me as one, a black person, and then two, a black person with no hair. And this was also coming back from my experience, and also, that sort of like stereotypes that we'd have in Jamaica as in Indian. If you hear Indian, you're going to think long hair, or, pretty hair is some kind of Indian looking hair. Not necessarily white, like even in Jamaica, it's usually like Indian hair,
Mhm.
And so I, at that time, associated Indian with long hair and stuff. And I felt like because it was such a huge thing in Jamaica, it would be similar for Indians in India, right? And it isn't like a woman with short hair. They just probably think you donated a hair for your,
Yeah.
charity, or for a lot of people, shave their heads like if they want to become more spiritual, etc. Like, it's like a normal thing. And people, they wear short hair all the time over there. But I didn't know that. I was just going with my stereotype and with my insecurities, right? And so I moved to India. So I actually bought a wig to go when
Yeah.
and I hate extensions. I do not like I don't like wearing, I'll wear braids, like box braids and that sort of thing, but I really don't like wearing wigs, especially if it's not like a kinky Afro wig. I feel
Relate.
like, it's us rejecting our natural hair, because it's been so ingrained for us to have straight hair. I don't trust myself and others, when they say, oh, they wear a wig because it's easier. And I'm like, would you readily wear a kinky Afro wig at the same speed and willingness that you would wear a Brazilian wave wig? Anyways, so I went to India in a wig, right? One of those Brazilian wave wigs. So not one of my proudest moments. And my roommate was actually from Colombia. She's Colombian. And I met her and I was like, listen, I have a wig because I don't know my hair. I cut off all my hair recently and I don't really know how to feel about it. And I don't know what work is going to say. So in the apartment, I'm just going to have no hair. And when I go out, I'm going to put this on. She's like, oh, okay, cool. So when I moved to India, there was like, I had that insecurity going in. One of the, I would say, advantages of or luck, coincidences, I don't know. One of those was that my internship, they took on clearly international workers, right? And so we were 5 or 6 of us were interns. One was Colombian, one was Jamaican living in France, and then there were like three or four French, so European French interns. And so we're this relatively mixed bunch. And so people would stare at us all the time because they're like, one, we're foreigners, white people. Then there's the Colombian who looks like, stereotypically would look like she's from North India. It's because Southern Indians typically are darker, and she was like, lighter skin. And then there's this black girl, and they're just like, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So there were lots of stares, probably more than we would get before. But I was also a little bit accustomed to that because in France, it was not as much stares. But in France, my friend group, it was me, a Chinese girl, another Colombian girl, and a German girl would always hang out. So we're this also a mixed bunch walking around, and sometimes, and then we were also talking in English. So all these weird looking people were talking in English in France. So I was sort of used to it, but it took it to like 10 new levels in India. What happened in India though was that you would see, we experienced levels of racism. So the 3 girls, one French, myself, the Jamaican, and the Colombian, we had different levels of reactions. So the white girl, the French girl, and she has beautiful, like really long auburn, kind of like reddish wave hair, right? And then the Colombian, straight black, typical Indian looking hair, and then there's me with no hair. I took my wig off after like 2 weeks. I took my wig off, thank God. But what happened is, one, everybody would cater to the French girl. Like if something went wrong, it's like, oh my God, are you okay? Is everything fine? And then if something went wrong to the Colombian, if something happened to the Colombian, who is relatively light skinned and sort of, at first glance, they would think, she's Indian. They'd be like, oh, is everything okay? Are you all right? Da, da, da. And then the black girl, oh, okay. Oh, you got hurt. Oh, no. Are you okay? And then we'd move on. It happened all the time. You would just get these, just different levels. So even if they would care, they're like, do you need a Band-Aid? They would just use a Band-Aid, fix it yourself. And then the other level, they take it the next step. And then, when you get to the white person, then they would full VIP. So that was an experience. And so within our group, we also spoke about it. Everybody was uncomfortable.
They were aware, yeah.
Everybody was aware.
Yeah, I'm glad for that, because some people might not be. Yeah. That was interesting.
Well, I also choose my friends. Really, this is a part of choosing my friends, of people who I hang out with. I am very strict about that. But they were aware, but they were also uncomfortable in their own way, in the sense that there was, it was uncomfortable. For me, I had to also like not take it personal and make sure I don't take it out on my friends, because they didn't ask for that. You know, they're just existing the same way that I'm existing, and they're getting this even when they try to like block it or avoid it. They're existing, and that's just what's coming to them. So I had to also realize not to take it personal and not to take it out on them or try to blame them for something that is usually a drop, and that's just what happened. And then they also had to like work on not feeling guilty, work on their guilt for that, and also not try to like overcompensate because of their guilt, but to be fair, and also to try to work on their allyship and block it, but also redirect it with grace and respect, and make sure that they're not playing into that sort of like savior role for me or my Colombian or whichever level it was going to, right? Mm-hmm. So that was also like an experience, which was a fortunate experience for me, that I was able to experience allyship in that way when I was in India. But it wasn't like, it was just, for me, it was also my experience in India was also microaggressions, and it was amplified by the fact that I was able to visibly see the different layers, the different levels of how colonialism and how slavery and all of that affects how people interact with like people of different races or nationalities, or people who look like, we also sometimes had fun with it. So we'd make our Colombian friend go and buy all the tickets so we could get local prices, because if she's in there, we're like, just don't talk, just go. No, 3, 2. Can we have 2 tickets? 2. Just don't talk. Don't say nothing. So we had some fun with it. But so that was a big part of like the Indian experience.
So would you say that would be one of the biggest challenges that you faced when moving abroad? Would that be across the board anyway? Because I remember you also lived in Colombia. But I know we talked a lot about France and India, but we haven't talked about Colombia at all. How long did you live in Colombia for?
I lived in Colombia for a year. I lived in India for like maybe 6 months, and I lived in France 5.5 years. So I remember my Colombian roommate, when I was leaving France and I was ready to come back to Jamaica, I was like, we were talking, and she's like, well, we have a school. Do you want to teach French to Colombian kids? I'm like, yes, thank you, I'm coming. Cool. So I actually moved to Colombia to hang out and live with my roommate who I met in India. And so I lived there for a year. So, I know a lot of Black women, we think about, and especially in times like this, we do think about what's it like, how am I going to be treated being Black? I don't know if maybe it was naivety, maybe it was optimism. I don't know. I don't think I thought about it. I didn't think about it that much. I don't think about it that much as well. What happens is you're just going to experience quite a bit of microaggressions. And a lot of it comes out of ignorance as well. A lot of it comes out of what they see in the media. And in my experience, 90, I can't even say 99%, a huge majority of the people are not, it's not malicious. They're not taking it from like a malicious point of view. I think a lot of it is out of ignorance. And if you show up with, which is also more work for us, but if you show up with grace and explain, then they will readjust and reevaluate. So that's kind of one of the biggest lessons that we learned. And I think also me traveling and being abroad as a child, spending so much time in a place that is in relation to white people, because the majority in the US are, white people. And so everything is structured for them. Experiencing that kind of gave me a different shift in perspective. And then so when I traveled abroad, it wasn't as shocking to have people stare at me, or I found that if you gave back a smile, sometimes they'll be shocked. They're like, oh, and then they would eventually smile back. A lot of it was also sometimes they just didn't know, they've never seen a black person before. Just the same way you can imagine if you went to a rural community in Jamaica and a white person showed up, they would probably never seen a white person before and they would stare just as much. I just kind of like flipped it, but also having open conversations with persons from that community, from that place helps. So when I was in Colombia, the kids, I was more at this time I was like pretty all natural with my hair and I was more comfortable with my hair. That was, I guess, a point of insecurity for me. Not like, oh my God, but it was as a fact. And so, but they were all fascinated and I'm like, yo, it's just hair. They're all fascinated. I was also fascinated that a lot of, when I arrived in Colombia, they wear cane rows a lot. So they would cornrow or cane-row their hair, the front, and they would do lots of braids, which is coming from their indigenous background, because that's how their indigenous people would wear their hair. So
that's interesting.
So a lot of them wear cane rows in their hair. So I would walk around and when I asked, that's what they're like, oh yeah, because this is coming from, I forget the names now, but the indigenous people from around there, this region or whatever. Everybody also thought that it was just going to be Pablo Escobar and war and all these things, and they were going to kidnap me and sell me off to the drug lords. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? That was 15, 20 years ago. It's not happening. And it did not happen. People were in a frenzy when I told them.
But everyone that I know, right, that has gone to Colombia, has always, black or white, has said that Colombia is awesome. Like, it's an awesome place to go to travel, whether you're alone or not. So I was excited to see that you lived in Colombia too. So what reason why I'm asking some of your challenges, right? As a solo traveler and a solo travel coach, what would you say to Caribbean women, especially Afro-Caribbean women? What are some of the things they should consider when moving abroad? Not moving abroad, but moving abroad or traveling solo. I don't know if there's differences, I'm guessing, because one is longer term than the other. But yeah, what are some of the considerations?
So for me, they're like, whenever I tell people that I solo travel and they're like, you travel by yourself, I'm like, yes, this is what I do. I think there are 3 top things that women care about, and there are 3 myths, right? One.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more Caribbean conversation.